We're live.
I just turned it on. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our data transparency public input session. I'm joined by Sarah Jenks, who will be presenting this wonderful recommendation for change, and she'll be going through all the details of this proposal. Our request of you is that you either watch at home at your own leisure and provide comments either at rockpab.org. On the front page, you will see a section where you can select the data transparency proposal for change, and you can leave your comments there, or feel free to leave a comment or a question in the chat. We will record those comments and questions, and the ones that we can get to, we will live. And thank you so much, and I'll turn it over to Sarah.
Thank you, Vanessa. As Vanessa mentioned, I'm Sarah. I am a policy and data analyst here at the PAB, and I'm going to talk about our project in the Division of Policy and Oversight called Police Data Transparency, a Proposal for Change. We're sharing? Okay.
We are, yes.
So as Vanessa mentioned, you can visit rockpab.org and you'll find the Data Transparency Public Input session. And you can read some details about the proposal here. You could read the entire proposal, and then you can comment either right on this page or in a form by clicking here. So without further ado, I'll get into the information here. This entire proposal is about the idea that if we have access to information about what the police do here in Rochester, then we can help our community have a say in those activities. So over the past about 20 years, we've gained access to all sorts of information about what all types of government organizations do. And then we use that information to analyze it and make recommendations for improvements, and we call that entire principle evidence-based decision-making. So the United States Congress and the President in 2016 recommended the creation of this U.S. Commission on Evidence-Based Policymaking, and that commission found that there are many barriers to the effective use of government data to generate evidence. Better access to these data holds the potential for substantial gains for society. And eventually in 2018, U.S. Congress passed with major bipartisan support the Foundations for Evidence-Based Policymaking Act of 2018. And this act required every section of the federal government to report out data on their actions. So with respect to law enforcement, we see implementation of that idea within the Department of Justice and specifically related to our work at the FBI. And the FBI collects and reports information about law enforcement activities all across the country. And here in New York State, we're talking about this topic in the Senate with Senate Bill 7273, which would require that all municipalities participate in the FBI's use of force program. And then there are nonprofits around the country, such as one very relevant to us is the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, or NACOL, and the Vera Institute of Justice and Measures for Justice. Measures for Justice is actually a national nonprofit that is based here in Rochester, so it's cool to have that local connection. And they are working with Rochester Police Department on this very topic of making Rochester's data more accessible to the community as a tool of empowerment, as I mentioned earlier. So this specific project is called Police Data Transparency, a Proposal for Change. And here at the Police Accountability Board, this process of a proposal for change is a community and data-driven process where the PAB makes formal recommendations to change policies and practices that impact the Rochester Police Department. So this document here, it makes formal recommendations about the collection and reporting of information about what the police do. The data that RPD collects and reports should represent the needs of the community, and it should be available based on the public's needs. So we are wondering what data you would like to see RPD make publicly available. At current, we know that the Rochester Police Department is thinking about this idea of data transparency and already doing great work around it. As I mentioned, they're working for Measures for Justice to create a portal to empower the community with lots of information, but also the Office of the Chief has mentioned in the City of Rochester's annual budget that they would like to enhance RPD's open data portal and provide increased transparency and data sharing with the public. So they currently have this great resource called RPD Open Data Portal, where you can look at data sets about crime, homicide, shootings, etc. And then you can also read department general orders, standard operating procedures, training manuals, program reviews. This is a really user-friendly website that any civilian can search around and look for information on. So this is where I found most of the information I'm going to talk about going forward. And this is where they would implement the recommendations that we will make. As I mentioned earlier, the Vera Institute for Justice is a national nonprofit that has a focus on police data transparency. They've created this index, which is a tool that calculated scores in 10 categories, which are these across the top: complaints about police misconduct, use of force, arrests, etc. They measured 94 locations across the country to compare these different types of police data. The Vera Institute of Justice did not score Rochester in this index, but we asked if they would verify our score if we calculated, and they did agree to that. And if you want to see our calculation, you can view the tool that I use to calculate the scores that I'm about to talk about. You can view it online, and if you have any suggestions for anything that I missed, you can certainly pass that along in the comments. So these are each of the categories that the Vera Institute for Justice has scored or cities on in their accessibility and availability of information about these police activities. So you'll see that I've listed RPD's score in each of these categories, and then the highest scoring agency, because I wanted to show us what is achievable. I do believe that Rochester can achieve these high scores in every category, and I'll explain why in a little bit. The overall score of 42 is a combination of each of those 10 categories, with different categories counting a little more, others a little less. And that score of 42 places RPD right in the very middle of the 94 agencies that Vera scored. You can see from this color coding that Rochester's resources vary in score. They get hundreds in some of the categories. There's room for improvement in a few, and there are others where a 0 means that no resource exists. You can read an analysis of each of these categories in the full proposal for change on our website, but I'm going to go into detail on 2 categories so you can get a feel for how these scores were calculated. So first, we will look at Rochester's crime reporting resource, where they got a police data transparency index score of 70. And out of those 94 scores that Vera did, this score of 70 would actually be ranked 5th. So this is a really high quality, robust resource that I'll show you. So you would get there from the open data portal. And there's first this landing page that gives lots of tools. You've got an interactive map, graphs, and infographics. And you even have a little bit of written analysis here that RPD has already done. So this gives you tons of information. You don't need to independently analyze it yourself. There's this starting point. However, this next part is close to the gold standard, where Rochester also makes their crime data set completely available for download for anyone like me, a data analyst, who might want to independently analyze that information. So I'll go back to the description. The strengths of this resource are that it's downloadable and up to date. By up to date, I mean that this data set is updated almost daily. And it covers many years of data. It goes all the way back to 2011. So if you wanted to compare over time, that would be very easy to do. I mentioned that this has incident level information like location, charge, and whether it was cleared. So when we go back here to the data set, you'll see that there's information about every single crime that was committed. And that's, like I mentioned earlier, that's what the gold standard is. Oops, sorry. Let's get back to that. Okay, and then they have that analytics page that I showed. Only drawbacks are that it's missing a little bit of demographic information. We would want to know about the race and gender of the officer, of the accused person, and if there was a victim. And then let's compare that to RPD's arrest data. It gets a police data transparency index score of 34, which ranks about the middle at 39th. There are a couple strengths here is that it's always located in RPD's annual reports. So if someone wants to compare over time, they would always know where to look. And then it also covers many years of data. In order to get this arrest data, we'd go to the city's annual reports page. And then I've clicked the most recent one, which was 2021. And here they show us just one number. In 2021, there were 6,312 arrests. So that gives us a good place to start, but it does have some drawbacks. It doesn't have those incident level information for us to compare by certain categories. When there's just a total number for a piece of information, we call that in the aggregate. And we want these things to be disaggregated by each of the categories that I list below. So those are just 2 of the 10 categories that you can read about in our report. We do have some overarching recommendations. So for each of the data sets that we talk about, we say that RPD's data should be current and machine readable. So an example of that is the crime data set that I showed, where machine readable means that I could just download all of that and put that into the software of my choosing, like Excel or a statistical package, and the computer would do the work for me to analyze it. And compare that against the arrest data where I, a human, had to go read the PDF. And if I wanted to analyze that, say over time, I would have to read it and then input that information into the software of my choosing if I did want to analyze. And then also, every data set should include incident level information like we saw with the crime data set. And we would want that to include the location, time, the demographic information, and then also data set specific information, which you can find in the report. Let's see. And then we would also want there to be unique identifiers across these data sets so that we don't have any personally identifying information, but we would want to be able to see, is there a certain incident in the arrest data set that also shows up in the use of force data set? If we had a unique identifier, we could easily link that without revealing any person's identity. And then lastly, as with many of our recommendations from PAB going forward, you're going to hear that we recommend that they build into the RPD build into their policies a sort of way to revisit and maintain current with community ideals. So that's our overarching recommendation. And again, I would like to plug rockpab.org, where you can go and read this full report as well as our disciplinary matrix. You can also give public feedback on that. And that's pretty much all right now. How's it going, Vanessa?
Everything looks great. We don't have any questions or anything that have come in, but if that's all you have, I think we're going to wrap it up and just say thank you for anybody who is watching currently or will be watching later on at home or later on this week. Sarah, do you know how long we're accepting public input for this proposal?
Yeah, we're accepting public input until December 31st, 2022. So you're
All right.
welcome to submit online through then. However, if you would like us to come and receive feedback from your group in person, we would be able to extend that into a little bit into 2023. But the website submissions will close on December 31st.
All right, excellent. Okay, so then, yeah, so by the end of the month, if anybody's watching this and wants to give their input, December, you said 31st will be the final date for that. And if you want to schedule a time for us to meet with your group, we can absolutely do that as well. You just have to reach out to the PAB. Thank you so much, Sarah. And I think that's it. Everybody have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye. I don't know how to end this stream. Hold on.